I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Picture a Roman wedding. We've all seen them in movies, right? So you're probably picturing, the marble columns, the sunlight.
Right, the whole epic backdrop.
Exactly. And you've got that bright saffron-colored veil, the flammeum, and the bride's hair. It's woven into those 6 traditional braids.
So intricate. Beautiful, really.
It is beautiful. And you see the knot of Hercules tied around her waist, this, ancient symbol of an eternal union. It looks festive.
It looks romantic. It's the image we've been sold for decades.
It's the whole happily ever after, 2,000 years in the making.
It is. It's the museum version.
Yeah.
The Hollywood version. It's sterilized. Like a marble statue where everyone is noble and the rituals are just these, quirky footnotes.
That's the thing about a marble statue, though. It's cold, and it doesn't talk. But today, we're going to pull that saffron veil back. Because if you were actually there, standing next to the bride, let's call her Valeria Quintina, based on the historical reconstruction we're using. Yeah. And you leaned in close, you wouldn't smell romance. You'd smell fear. You'd smell tears. And that nod of Hercules.
Not a cute tradition.
No. It was a receipt.
That is the perfect way to put it. A receipt. We have to completely pivot our perspective here. We're not looking at this from the outside in.
Right. Not as a guest or a historian.
No. We are looking at this whole thing through the eyes of a 19-year-old girl, Valeria. And for her, this beautiful ceremony, it's not a celebration.
It's a countdown.
It's a countdown.
A countdown to sunset.
Yeah.
And that's really the heart of this deep dive, isn't it? The history books, the movies, they walk us through the party, the songs, the feast.
And then the door closes.
And then the door closes, the camera just cuts to black, we fade out, and we assume the rest is, private, a personal moment.
But that cut to black is where the real history is. That's our mission today. We are peeling back that museum-style view to get at the hidden history of the Roman wedding night.
And we have to understand this, fundamentally. This wasn't a union of lovers, not in any way we would recognize it.
No. It was a transfer of property. And in that transfer, the idea of consent, the bedrock of what we consider intimacy.
It just didn't exist.
It did not exist.
Yeah.
It wasn't even part of the equation.
It's a really heavy realization. So we're going to walk through Valeria's experience almost hour by hour based on this reconstruction from legal texts, social commentaries, medical writings at the time.
And she's not an outlier. Her story represents the reality for millions of women.
I have to say, digging into the sources for this, it is chilling. It completely dismantles that whole traditional marriage idea.
It does. It requires us to look at the parts that make us uncomfortable. We're going to talk about the law, the culture, and the raw physical reality of what happened when that bedroom door finally closed.
So to understand why that veil smells like tears, we have to go back to the morning of the wedding. Because for Valeria, the terror didn't start at the altar. It started the second she woke up in her father's house for the very last time. She's 19. She's from the gens of Valeria, a respectable, powerful family. But legally, she's barely even there.
She's a subsidiary. That's a good way to think of it. In Rome, being a daughter isn't just a fact of biology. It's a very specific legal definition. She has spent her entire life under patria potestas.
Right, and we see that term everywhere in the texts, patria potestas. It's usually translated as fatherly power, but that feels so weak. It doesn't really get at the violence of the concept, does it?
Not even close. Fatherly power makes you think of, a curfew.
Oh,
or being grounded.
Yeah, exactly.
Patria potestas is a total monopoly on personhood. In the eyes of the law, Valeria isn't a full person. She's an extension of her father. She doesn't own property because, in a very real legal sense, she is property.
So all the things that make her who she is, her body, her work, her future children.
It all belongs to the paterfamilias, the head of the family. Yes, she lives under his protection, but it's also his absolute total dominance.
So the wedding ceremony isn't about two people building a life. It's a deed transfer.
That's exactly what it is. It is the moment that authority, that ownership, transfers from the father to the husband. The handing over of the bride isn't just a symbol.
It's literal.
It is the literal transfer of the title deed.
Let's talk about the new owner then, the groom, Gaius Servilius Caepio. Because when you look at the profile in the sources, the mismatch is just startling. Valeria is 19.
And Gaius is 41.
Which today would be A huge red flag.
A huge red flag. But by Roman standards, it was completely normal. It was strategic. We shouldn't picture Gaius as some, cartoon villain.
Right. He's not a monster.
No, he's a Roman man of a certain age. He's a widower. He has buried at least one wife already, probably more. He's a veteran. He's a businessman. He navigates Roman politics. And what he needs, above all else, is an heir. That is the entire point of this transaction.
And the source material says they met just once, 3 weeks before the wedding day. That meeting. It wasn't a meet cute.
No, it was an appraisal. He didn't look at her with affection or even lust. The description said he looked at her with this clinical expression that made her want to disappear.
He was sizing her up.
He was assessing her physical viability. Is she healthy? Are her hips wide enough to survive childbirth? Does she look like she comes from good stock? It's like checking livestock. He's buying a high-value asset, and he's just making sure the merchandise is sound.
That clinical coldness is almost scarier than if he'd been leering at her.
It is, because it reinforces that to him, she's an object, a means to an end.
And the other women in her life, they know this. There's this one detail in the source that it just haunted me. It's when she's with her mother right before the procession. Valeria's terrified. She's physically trembling while they're pinning the veil. And you'd expect her mother to comfort her, to say, it's okay, he's a good man, you'll be happy.
You expect reassurance.
But she gets the exact opposite. Her mother looks her right in the eye and with this sheer force of will says, it will be over by morning. And then she says, you must endure it.
It'll be over by morning. That's what you say to someone before surgery, without anesthesia, not before their wedding night.
It's like advice for a battlefield amputation, not a marriage.
It is, and it reveals this collective trauma that Roman women shared.
Yeah.
Valeria realizes in that moment that her mother and every other married woman in that room, they all share this secret.
They've all been through it.
They've all survived this night. They never speak about it openly, but the silence is deafening. The mother is admitting without saying it that she knows the night will be an ordeal, that it will be painful, terrifying. But the goal isn't happiness.
The goal is survival.
Endure it. That's the legacy she passes down. It's not about joy. It's about getting through to the next day.
That just sets the stakes so clearly. This is about physical and emotional survival, which brings us to what the source calls Valeria's hidden curriculum, because her mother gives her that grim warning, but it's her Aunt Cornelia who gives her the actual playbook.
Cornelia is such a fascinating figure in this reconstruction. She's a widow who refused to remarry.
Which was a big deal in Rome, right?
Huge deal. It was a massive statement of independence. She basically opted out of the system. And she's the one who pulls Valeria into a side room, away from the men, to give her the real sex talk.
But it's not about biology.
Not at all. She's explaining game theory, survival tactics.
She lays out what she calls the spectrum of husbands. I thought this was so insightful because it adds nuance to the men, too.
Right. She's not just saying all men are monsters. She explains that Valeria is essentially rolling the dice. Some men, she says, are considerate. They might understand the bride is young and terrified. They might be gentle. They might even wait. But others, and this is the danger view, the wedding night strictly as a purchased right. They have paid the dowry, they have signed the contract, and they intend to exercise that right immediately, regardless of the bride's care or pain.
And Valeria has no idea which man Gaius is. She's met him for, 10 minutes? She has zero data.
None. So Cornelia gives her the cold, hard reality. A wife's body legally belongs to the husband. Refusal is impossible. You cannot say no to your owner. In the Roman legal mind, a wife saying no is just. It's a contradiction in terms. It doesn't compute.
So if you can't say no and you don't know if you've got a good one or a bad one, what do you do? What's the strategy?
You manage him. You create the impression of submission to avoid violence.
You fake it.
You fake it. Cornelia is very clear. If you fight back, you will get hurt and you will still lose because the entire legal and social structure is on his side. But if you accommodate, if you appear to submit, you survive. It's about creating, as the source puts it, these small spaces of autonomy within total powerlessness.
It's a survival strategy. And there's a quote from Cornelia that it really stuck with me. She says, the wedding night is not the end, it is the beginning.
That's the whole pivot. Valeria isn't just trying to survive one single night. She is entering a lifetime of service.
Cornelia completely reframes marriage for her. It's not a romance.
It's a job. And to get any kind of leverage in that job, you have to make yourself indispensable.
How, though? How do you become indispensable?
By being useful. manage the household flawlessly,
Right.
oversee the slaves, the budget, the supplies, and most importantly, produce sons. Make yourself, as Cornelia says, too valuable to damage carelessly.
That's so cold.
It's brutal, but it's also true. If you are just a body, you are disposable. But if you are the competent manager of his entire domestic world and the mother of his heirs, now you have value. You become an asset he needs to protect, not just use up.
So, armed with this terrifying but pragmatic advice, Valeria has to go back out and face the party. The sun is going down, the torches are lit. To everyone else on the street, this looks like a parade.
Oh yeah, it's a huge spectacle. Musicians, guests, singing, torches. A big celebration.
But for Valeria, stepping out of her father's door for the last time.
It feels like a funeral march. She is being walked from the only home she has ever known to a complete stranger's house. And the atmosphere isn't polite. It's aggressive.
The source talks about the crude humor. The guests are shouting sexual jokes, really obscene stuff at the couple as they walk. Why? I mean, was it just people being drunk and rowdy?
No, it was completely ritualistic. These jokes were called Fescennine verses, and the Romans believed they were necessary.
Necessary for what?
To publicly acknowledge the sex that was about to happen. By shouting about it, by making it crude and funny, they were normalizing it. It takes this private, terrifying, potentially violent act and stamps it as, natural and public.
It's a form of social pressure.
Exactly. It pressures the bride to accept her role. Everyone knows what's coming. Everyone is laughing about it. So her fear is made to seem abnormal. She's the only one not in on the joke.
And then they get to Gaius's house. And we have that famous tradition of carrying the bride over the threshold. Today, we think of that as so romantic, right? He's sweeping her off her feet. But given everything we've talked about, I'm guessing there's a much darker root here.
It's the polar opposite of romantic. It is a ritual reenactment of a crime.
A crime? What crime?
The abduction of the Sabine women. It's a foundational myth for Rome. The story goes that the first Roman men didn't have any wives, so they invited the neighboring Sabine tribe to a festival, and then they kidnapped their women.
Wow.
And this ritual, lifting the bride over the threshold, it symbolizes that she does not enter the house willingly. She is taken by force.
So every time we see that in a modern wedding, it's unknowingly reenacting a mass kidnapping.
Precisely. Gaius isn't carrying her to be a gentleman. He is carrying her to visually demonstrate that this is a capture. It commemorates the idea that Roman marriage begins with an act of force.
Once she's inside, the psychological erasure just continues. There are these rituals with fire and water, and then she has to say that famous line, Ubi to Gaius, ego Gaia.
Where you are Gaius, I am Gaia.
It sounds so unifying to us, almost poetic. Where you go, I go.
It does, but look at the grammar. She is literally taking the female form of his name. She isn't saying, I am Valeria, your partner. She's saying, I am the female version of you.
She have no identity apart from him.
None. Valeria Quintina dissolves at the door. Inside that house, she is just Gaius's wife.
Yeah.
Her legal personhood is completely subsumed into his.
It's just total erasure. And now the party is over, the guests have left, the door to the house is closed, and this is the moment. The moment her entire life has been building toward the bedroom.
The lectus genialis, the marriage bed. It's placed right in the atrium, the main hall, so it's very public in a way. The pronuba, the matron of honor, has brought Valeria in.
And she helps her undress.
She strips her of the outer garments, the veil, the wreath, but she leaves the tunic on. And then the pronuba leaves the room.
But she doesn't go home.
No, she waits right outside the bedroom door. And that detail, to me, is one of the most chilling parts of this whole thing.
Why?
Her presence confirms that assistance might be needed. It acknowledges the potential for physical resistance from the bride and therefore violence from the groom. She is the backup. She's also the official witness that the marriage is being consummated, whether Valeria wants it or not.
So, Valeria is alone, and Gaius enters. The source says he assesses her, but it's not a lover's greeting.
It's clinical. He's not affectionate at all. He says something like, you are frightened. That is normal.
He's not comforting her fear, he's just classifying it.
Exactly. He's dismissing it as a standard part of the procedure, like being nervous before, I don't know, a dental extraction. It's expected, and it's irrelevant.
And then we come back to the knot of Hercules, that belt. Valeria, maybe trying to get it over with, reaches to untie it herself.
Right, trying to follow Aunt Cornelia's advice. Show compliance.
But Gaius stops her. He says, I will do that.
Yes, because it's symbolic. It has to be him. Untying that knot represents his exclusive right to access her body. It's not about her undressing. It's about him unwrapping what is now his property.
An assertion of dominance.
A total assertion of his rights. He is opening what is now closed to all other men.
And then, the act itself, the source describes it not as intimacy, but as an inspection followed by the claiming of rights.
We have to be really clear here. By any modern standard, by any human standard, what happened in that room was rape. It was painful and non-consensual.
But not in their eyes.
Not legally. We have to understand the Roman mindset. In Roman law, marital rape is an oxymoron. It's a legal impossibility. He owns her sexuality.
Yeah.
He is exercising a property right. The concept of her saying stop has no legal meaning.
It's just brutal. And Valeria, she remembers Cornelia's strategy. She goes still, she accommodates, she endures.
She survives, and this is the mundane horror of it all. Gaius is satisfied. The source says he calls her acceptable.
Acceptable, like a piece of furniture.
Exactly. And then he just goes to sleep. There's no aftercare, no comfort, no words. The transaction is complete. And Valeria is left lying there in pain, realizing the absolute truth of Cornelia's warning.
Yeah.
This wasn't a one-time ordeal.
This is her life now.
She has to do this again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that.
That specific realization that the nightmare is now just the routine, that must be absolutely crushing.
It is. But the sun does come up. And this is where the story, I think, really shifts in a surprising way. Because we usually stop here. The wedding is over.
Right. But Valeria wakes up, she looks in the mirror, expecting to see someone different, someone broken.
But she looks the same. And that's the shock.
Yeah.
You know, the world hasn't changed, but her entire internal reality has been shattered. And this is when she meets the person who will actually truly save her life. It's not a family member, it's Tirsa.
Tirsa, the housekeeper, a freed woman.
Yes. And Tirsa is the mentor Valeria actually needs. Not the abstract advice from her aunt, but the practical, on-the-ground intelligence. Tirsa lives in this house. She knows this man.
And she knows what happened to the first wife.
She does, and she tells Valeria. The first wife died trying to produce an heir. 5 pregnancies in 4 years.
My God, 5 and 4 years. In the ancient world, that's a death sentence.
It killed her. Tirsa's giving Valeria a stark warning. Pleasing him in the bedchamber is not enough. If you rely only on being a sexual object, you will be used up until you break.
So what's the alternative?
You must become indispensable through competence. You have to run this household so perfectly, so efficiently, that he literally cannot imagine his life without you.
So Valeria listens. She stops being the terrified bride and starts becoming a strategist.
She starts building leverage. She learns to run the house better than anyone before her. She learns the slaves' names. She manages the inventory, the finances.
She's managing the estate.
She's managing the estate, and she's managing Gaius.
Yeah.
She learns that if she appears willing in the bedroom, he actually demands it less often. She learns to read his moods, to anticipate his needs. She's creating those small spaces of autonomy her aunt talked about.
She isn't free. Let's be clear about that.
Not even close.
Yeah.
She is not liberated. But she is carving out a zone where she isn't just a passive victim. She's an active operator. She is surviving by making herself the CEO of his domestic life.
Which brings her to the biggest gamble of her life. Pregnancy.
The ultimate double-edged sword for a Roman woman.
It's what she's there for. It's her primary function, but it's also the single most likely thing to kill her.
It is the most dangerous thing she will ever do. Maternal mortality rates were just astronomical. Infection, hemorrhage, complications. There's no real medical help. Valeria knows getting pregnant could kill her, just like it killed the first wife. It is a terrifying roll of the dice.
But she also knows it is her only path to real security.
It is. A childless wife can be divorced, cast aside. But the mother of a son, she is the mother of the heir. That is a position of real power and respect in the household. So she takes this calculated risk. The danger is immense, but the alternative is to remain permanently vulnerable.
And the birth. The source says she goes into labor early, at 7 months, and it is a near-death experience.
It almost kills her. 23 hours of labor. The description is harrowing. She's surrounded by midwives. She's screaming, bleeding. But she survives, and she produces a healthy son.
And the change in Gaius is immediate.
Immediate and total. He visits her, and for the first time, he doesn't just look at her as property. He shows her respect. Not love. We should not confuse this with romance. It's respect and gratitude.
She fulfilled the contract.
She fulfilled the contract in the most important way possible. She is no longer just a body to be used. She is the vessel of his legacy. Her position in that household is now unassailable. She has, in effect, earned her tenure.
It's such a transactional victory, but it is a victory. She made herself too valuable to break.
She won the game. The brutal, horrible game that Cornelia and Tirsa taught her how to play.
So let's fast forward a bit. Valeria plays the long game. She has 3 more children, and she builds this network.
This part is so important. She doesn't just hoard her knowledge. She takes that hidden curriculum she learned and she passes it on. She helps other terrified 19-year-olds who are being married off.
She becomes a mentor.
She becomes the Aunt Cornelia for the next generation. She creates this secret female society, this support system that really keeps the Roman world running while the men are off writing the laws and fighting the wars.
And then, after 22 years of this marriage, Gaius dies. Valeria is 41. The source is very clear about her reaction. It is not grief.
It is relief, a deep, profound, soul-deep exhalation of relief. For the first time since she was 19 years old, she belongs to herself.
She refuses to remarry.
Of course. Why would she? As a wealthy widow, she actually has significant independence in Rome. Her property rights return to her. She has grown sons to protect her status. She has her freedom. Why would she ever put herself back under the power of another man?
She's done being property.
She's done. Her legacy isn't a statue or a building. It's the women she helped survive.
Yeah.
It's a quiet legacy, but a profound one.
She wasn't a queen or a general. She was just a woman who had to navigate this system that was designed to crush her. And she did it. She survived.
She did?
Now, this is the point in the deep dive where we usually wrap up and say, wow, the Romans were brutal. Glad we don't live then. But you brought up a statistic from the source material that just, it stopped me cold. Because we've been talking about Catria Potestas and this idea that a husband owns his wife's body as if it's some dusty ancient history. But the legal ghost of Gaius didn't just vanish when Rome fell.
No, it didn't. That principle, that a husband has an irrevocable right to his wife's body, it baked itself into the DNA of Western legal history.
Right.
European common law, American law, it was all built on this Roman foundation.
And the specific fact you highlighted, tell us the timeline of marital rape laws.
This is the kicker. In England, the legal doctrine that a husband could not be found guilty of raping his wife because her consent was seen as permanently and irrevocably given at the moment of marriage, just like Valeria's was.
Right.
That remained the law of the land until 1991.
1991. I was alive then. I mean, we were listening to Nirvana in 1991. That is not ancient history.
No, that is living memory. The House of Lords finally overturned it, but for nearly 2,000 years, the ghost of Roman law was sitting in the courtroom saying, Valeria belongs to Gaius, the door is closed, you have no case.
So the idea that a wife has a legal right to say no to her husband it's brand new.
It is historically brand new.
Yeah.
We are essentially the first few generations of women in Western history to live with that as a given legal reality.
That puts Valeria's fear in a completely different light. It wasn't just her story. It was the story of generations upon generations of women. It was the story of our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers.
It is the default setting of Western civilization until, historically speaking, about 5 minutes ago.
That really changes how you see all those wedding traditions we started with, doesn't it? The veil, carrying the bride over the threshold. We see them as romantic traditions.
But they're scars. They're echoes of a time when marriage was a purchase and a woman was the thing being bought.
And acknowledging that doesn't mean we have to, cancel all weddings.
No, of course not. But it means we should understand the history we're playing with. We should honor the Valerias who endured that system so that the definition of marriage could eventually change for the better.
Absolutely. The next time you see a groom carry a bride over the threshold, remember the Sabine women. Remember Valeria. And maybe just be thankful that, for most of us now, the locks on our doors work from both sides.
That's a very hard one, Freedom.
That's it for this deep dive. We may have stripped away some of the romance, but hopefully we've added a little bit of truth. Keep questioning the history you think you know. We'll see you next time.